Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the House of PMO and Hot PMO. We've got our monthly PMO show. It's PMO HotHouse. Great to be here again for kicking off 2024. Hope you're all right, and let's get to it. So, hello, hello, hello. It is 2024. We've got Eileen and John back with us. How are we all doing? Are we're all tickety boo? We're now nearly at the end of January, so we've got over the worst part, have we not? How are you doing? You're all okay?
We are fabulous. As you say, we've gone through that kind of hump of coming back in. I was very sneaky and I made sure I sort of booked all those long-term meetings, the repetitive ones. I did those before I signed off for December. So they were already lined up in people's diaries when we got back. So we were quite organized, hit the ground running, got everyone slowly up to speed again. And yeah, now we're up and running and looking forward to an amazing 2024. How about you, Eileen?
I love that optimism. Well, it would be nice if we'd left all of the cold sniffles and flus in 2024, but I think we're going to be in a position to at least leave them all in January. So looking forward to the 1st of February next year. And I just not a fan of the number 2023. So 2024 feels much more kind of on an even keel and having a good year this year.
So, and welcome to people that are joining us on the live streams. We are on YouTube, LinkedIn, X, and Facebook. And if you are watching us on any of those channels, please do make sure you join in too. Just leave any kind of comments and things as you wherever you're seeing this. But we also have some lovely people in the studio, as we like to call it, very grand. But people in the audience, and for people here, we should know that we really love the chat box because we'll be pulling in some of your thoughts and stuff. So please do get involved. So we're just changing it up a little bit for 2024. We always like to just have a bit of a play around with the formats and stuff. So PMO HotHouse is all about PMO and bringing you some of the latest news and views and things, and but also doing a little bit of pre-planning so you know exactly what's coming up. So today we have got a new news section. So some bits and pieces that we think that you should be interested in from PMO people. We've also got the skill of the month, which is going to be around problem solving. And we've got a special guest this time for our hot seat. And we'll be looking forward to having a chat with Robert later on with Eileen. So before we get going, let's have a look at the latest. You know how much we love our little jingles. Hope you enjoyed that one. We think it was is quite cute. Extra. So we actually wanted to do a little bit more each month about what some of the news is coming out in various places that we think PMO people might be interested in knowing about. And again, this is coming from the various places from where we are hanging out, or news that we get told about, or things that are coming into here at House of PMO. Let's crack on with it. This is my segment. So I don't know how many of you have heard this.
When you and your team achieve your goals, a sense of accomplishment inspires everyone to keep making progress. So it should be easy for you to organize projects, stay on track, and work together. This is the new Microsoft Planner. Simple, collaborative, and powerful. Planner helps everyone effectively manage their work and achieve their goals. It brings all your tasks, plans, and projects across Microsoft 365 in one familiar place. Assisted by next-generation AI, Planner jumpstarts your plans and takes the work out of organizing so you can drive toward results faster. Share and assign tasks, even align them to goals. Manage resources and deliverables, and report on results. Planner is simple. It helps you stay organized. Tasks are easier to find with a view of what needs to be done today. Planner is flexible. Get started quickly, track your work in context, and choose your view and approach, like lists, boards, timelines, and sprints. Planner is scalable. You can manage everything from projects to programs to a full portfolio. and configure it to grow with your needs. Planner is intelligent. It suggests tasks to meet your plan's goals. With simple prompts, you can quickly create plans and reports. From individual to-do lists to team initiatives, the Planner app in Microsoft Teams helps users stay on top of their tasks and plans, so they feel more accomplished every day.
And no, we didn't get any kind of sponsorship from Microsoft on that whatsoever, but did go to a session a couple of weeks ago. It is talking about what's coming out in terms of Office 365. I thought you'd like to know about it if you didn't already, for people that are either using the Microsoft Project version online or MS Project on the web, as it's called, because it will be changing. It will be coming that new name, Microsoft Planner. The other thing that I think is really interesting about it is if your PMO is using the Office 365 stuff, and you could see there that it actually becomes a new tab in Teams. If you don't use any tools, if you don't have any access to some tools, perhaps it is something that your PMO could start to have a play with if you're not already using something. Because I'm really conscious of, it's great to hear about how many PMOs do have these kind of tools at their fingertips and PPM tools and things like that. However, there's so many of us that are not. And again, it feels really familiar. And I really like the fact that it also gives you that option to do the usual things like having plans as Gantt charts, as task lists, and even the bits that kind of look a little bit like Trello. So Project for the Web is going to be renamed MS Planner, and it's going to pull in some other bits that are already there, which is Task. I'm going to have a look at it if you're not already familiar with it. It's April or spring 2024. That's what's coming down the line. Other things that have come to our attention that are really interesting is something called micro qualifications. As you probably know, the House of PMO has a set of 4 qualifications, and they come from the accrediting body APMG. APMG have obviously lots of different qualifications, and they do bring out new ones, and we thought we'd just tell you about which ones are coming out, which are new for them as well. So there's one called Experience Collab, or Collab, which is it's a really interesting one. And Eileen, I'd forgotten that you were actually at the launch event for this week, weren't you?
I was.
Do you want to come off mute and just give us a quick?
I think so. It was originally set up for managed service professionals, so people who are delivering IT services, saying they could. We kept achieving SLAs, but our customers were still unhappy. So what they've developed is this concept of XLAs, which actually kind of goes into kind of a much more 360-degree review of the service that's being provided. And obviously we were interested because as a PMO, we deliver services. So I'm hoping we've already had that conversation, but hopefully they're going to come and do a session at PMO Learn in June for us.
Super. So there you go. That's the first one that was coming out, which I thought there might be some.
Nobody knows about PMO Learn yet. That's a secret, everybody. Yes.
And the second one that they've got, which I think might be an interest to a lot of PMO people, is obviously from a change management point of view. But I know a lot of you, me included, enjoy the kind of neuroscience side of things like change and how people think about change and how we all go through change and things like that. So they brought out a new qualification, which is the PEP approach, which is what you can see there, the PEP, upside down. But it is very much for people that are doing a lot more around the change management services, for example, out of the PMO, or very interested in the kind of people aspects of project management and PPM and PMO and all that kind of good stuff. Again, it's one of those I think is probably falls into the softer skill camp, but for anybody who kind of likes that kind of thing, go and have a look. So these are both from APMG. There's another couple that they're bringing out this year, but I think these two were the ones that maybe PMO people may be interested in. So want to check it out. A bit of news from us as well. We have got a version 2 of the PMO competency framework coming. It has been coming for a while. For people that are not aware, TSO, which is the Stationery Office publishers, we've been working with them on the new version, and essentially the context is the same. For us, it was all about trying to make it clearer, better navigation. Okay, yeah, there were a few typos that have been sorted out and a bit of grammar. But yeah, version 2 is, we'll be doing a bigger launch, but it is coming. You can already buy this version through TSO, and it'll be available in other places really, really soon. But there's kind of like an advanced thing on that. But if you're thinking about buying the PMO competency framework, if you've not already got it, you can get the new version. If you have already got the current version, it is essentially the same content, so the content is not really changed. Okay, so new edition there, and some of the other news that you may or may not have seen, which is certainly getting a lot of people interested and excited more about AI and project management, is that PMI launched their new kind of like AI bot or assistant, which they've called PMI Infinity, which is basically getting into this whole thing around what ChatGPT does, but limiting it around the PMI content right across their publications and their resources on their websites and stuff like that. Yes, it will only be available to their members after a certain day, but if you want to go and have a look and play with it to understand a little bit more about, where this kind of what they call learning assistant type technologies go and have a look. Because the other thing as well is that what we've also discovered is that actually there's quite a few organizations and PMOs that are already utilizing this kind of approach to help in terms of their assistant type work, where you're getting asked questions about where can I find this template, how can I find some more detail about this process. Actually, a lot of the more advanced PMOs or organizations are already starting to automate that using this kind of technology as well. So PMI, probably the first in the whole PPM space to be really utilizing this kind of technology. So going to have a play before they kind of shut it down and put it behind the firewall. So other news, this caught my eye, and this is news. You can see published on January the 24th, just some news about the Pentagon, and that they're having a new office. So that's a new PMO, but look at that name, Customer Experience Officer Portfolio Management Office. So there you go. And interestingly, how that is related to the Experience Collab qualification that has just been launched as well. So it's all about experiences and being able to make the Pentagon's own kind of IT operation better for their users right across their organization. And the interesting thing is that is obviously a PMO that goes alongside that to support that. So interesting, isn't it, how you start to hear one thing and then they say it all the time, don't they? You're thinking about one thing and then suddenly you start to see a lot more of it. There's certainly something in this experience stuff, isn't there? And if you think about it from a PMO point of view, isn't that what we're trying to do in terms of making the experience of working with the PMO or what the PMO is offering our organizations better for the people that are utilizing it and using it? So there you go. So there's a great title in terms of the PMO. And as finally for me, in terms of news, this is something else that I thought were really interesting. This is a PMO job spotlight, which we hope to bring you each month as well. But why is this one being spotlighted? So it's been an interesting week for talking about PMOs and project data analytics. If you missed the session that we did earlier on in the week, you'll see that in the newsletter next week, which was sharing some stories from a couple of PMOs that are doing some good stuff with project data analytics in their PMO. And I thought it'd be really interesting. Are there any jobs out there currently being recruited for that don't belong within the project control space, but are specifically asking for that kind of project data analytics experience? And the only one in both LinkedIn jobs and Indeed, which is another big job hunting place on the web, this was the only one. The only one, a PMO administrator level role, where they explicitly talking about the data aspects and that data analytical side to the role. The only one. The rest of them, there's about a handful that were very much about project controls, but this one was the only one. So isn't that interesting? We're hearing a lot about project data analytics and stuff. However, the job ads are not really asking for it. So interesting. So that's it from me. That's the news for this month. Hopefully it was a nice eclectic mix, and we'll be bringing more of that to you next month. So without further ado, let's get on to the next part. So it is hot soft skills. We need to get kind of like this, mixed it up a little bit, because actually it's hot skills. So John, take it away.
Hey, how you doing? So hot skills is something we've done sort of several times over the last year on HotHouse. It's where we take one key skill for the PMO space and we kind of spend a few minutes just diving deep into it. And the one we're looking at today is solving problems. So this is something that is, just click onto the next slide, Lindsay. So this is something that is in the competency framework. It's on page, 293 in my version. If you've got the CCO one, I'm not quite sure what page it's on, but it's in there. And this is a key, it's one of the key skills that we have for particularly PMO analysts and PMO managers. And the competency framework defines it as the ability to define, determine, and implement solutions to difficult or complex issues. And it must be all of those things. There's a lot of people that are very good at finding and determining the issues that we've got out there, but it is really about actually finding and implementing those solutions to those problems as well. Particularly picking up on the sort of analyst role and the manager role here. This, for me, at least, is one of the key skills that I think differentiates someone who is defined as a PMO administrator as opposed to a PMO analyst, because the analyst role tends to be a lot more about not just following the processes, but actually understanding the data, generating insight, and then moving into that and let's improve things and solve some of the problems that are bubbling up through the data and through what we're seeing out there. So it's quite a big step for sort of junior people in the PMO. It's a skill that they need to master to be able to make it and say, actually, I'm not a PMO administrator anymore. I'm definitely a PMO analyst. It's really important strategically as well as a skill for PMO teams, strategically in the organization, to identify misalignments when problems are arising, help prioritize resources, prioritize programs in our portfolios, but also on a day-to-day basis. It's a skill that we use at all levels, from solving differences of opinion between people in our project teams, helping project managers navigate tricky things, and helping people adapt to change as well, and just improving team dynamics as we go. Onto the next slide. So what I want to do really is just give you a few tools that you can take away and use. And I always try and find a nice simple one. And this is the simplest technique that I could find that is useful and it works. And it's called the STOP technique. And of course it's an acronym, STOP. Basically, for any problem that you're facing, this is something that you can either sort of do in quite a lot of detail, or you can just keep this in your head and talk through this in a problem-solving conversation with somebody. The first one sounds obvious, it's stop and pause, but it's one that we often get wrong. It always feels like if somebody's coming to you with a problem, imagine the situation, right? You've got that conversation, they've grabbed you, they're right in your face, you're feeling the pressure, your fight or flight sort of mode is kind of pounding away. I need to deal with this now urgently. Always take time to pause. Remember that first step of stop. Take a minute, take a breath in, breathe out, just take even a heartbeat, even a second, even a breath before you actually respond to that. It helps you assess the situation calmly. It helps you get in control of the situation and think about what you actually need to be doing and what time you need. And it avoids you going with a sort of gut impulse response to something that might not always be the right solution. Once we've taken that moment, thinking about what the problem is and the potential causes. That's where the analytical thinking comes in, especially for our PMO analysts there, thinking about, well, what you're telling me about a problem, but what actually really is what you're telling me, is that the real problem, or is there something underlying it? It doesn't have to be in depth. Again, this could be something that's a very, very quick process going on in your head during a conversation, thinking about what the underlying issues might be, and then coming up with options, either something that in that short corridor conversation, that's something you're normally doing in your head, but equally you could be bouncing those ideas off somebody else. Someone is coming to you with a problem. I've got a problem. For some reason, nobody can log into our PPM tool today. Pause. Think. Okay, so just to clarify, have you spoken to other people outside of our team? Is it just our office? Is understanding, clarifying what the issues might be, thinking about what the potential causes might be there, and then just talking through options. Okay, so maybe you could speak to the IT team, maybe get a message out to people. What would that message look like? Helping people think through and understand what the options are. And then when we're happy, you've got agreement with that person in the corridor, it's then going ahead and proceeding with the most suitable option to move forward with. And the big thing there is taking that decisive action and giving that nice, clear direction and move forward. Like all things, as Eileen's just mentioned in chat, it's a really, really simple process on paper, but actually when you're faced with those challenges, it's a hard one to actually remember. And I personally find the hardest step is that very first one, which is the simplest of all of them, which is just stopping, taking a breath before sort of diving in impulsively on something. A slightly deeper model, if we just move on to the next one, this is called A3 analysis, and it's called A3 analysis because I know a lot of people think, well, A3, what, like the piece of paper? Surprisingly, yes, this actually was named after the piece of paper and the A3 paper size. And the idea was, this comes from sort of lean management, where they wanted to have an A3 sheet that summed up the entire troubleshooting, the problem solving process you were going through. And this is how it's laid out on your A3 piece of paper, defining the problem, identifying it. And you see here, I'm not going to go through each of these in turn, but there's questions under each of these sections here. So again, what is the problem that we're facing? Are there any particular KPIs that we need to focus on? Is there any historical content that we need to take in when we're trying to focus on what the problem is? Once we've established that, we're just making notes of it in these sections, because the idea is not only is this a way of thinking about the problem, it's a way of communicating it as well. We can take this A3 sheet, stick it on the wall in our area. If we're remote, share it in SharePoint, so everyone can see what's going on at any given point as we build this out. Then we're looking at the current conditions. What is actually happening? Focusing on facts. Where can we get real data in here? And how can we visualize those in a graph, in a data table? But we're trying to take this down to data, take the emotion out where we can, and focus on the data that help us analyze the situation. We also want to be clear there on what the goal is. So we know what the problem is. We know about the current conditions. What are we actually aiming to achieve? Is it a quick fix for now to get us, if we've got something that's broken, is it about fixing it immediately? Or are we looking for long-term solutions? Or actually, are we going to do one pass to solve a quick problem and then something longer term? Can we all align on what we believe we're here to try and solve today, even if there is a different goal we're trying to focus on tomorrow? Once we're clear on that lot, then we can dive in, analyze our problem, understand the challenges. There's lots of techniques we can use, and I'll mention some of those on the next slide, things like 5 whys, fishbone diagrams, brainstorming, which is the same as our options in our stop model, deciding what we want to do, then coming up with our implementation plan. And again, depending on how complex, how long-term this is, that's either going to be a sort of Gantt chart, a couple of bullets of what we're going to do, but we're also being clear here on what done looks like. What are the metrics? What do we expect to see? And crucially, who is it that's going to be accountable for these things? And we shouldn't forget about the last step there as well, that once we've actually gone through this cycle, how do we then follow up and track the progress? If we've improved a process, and this is mainly about improving processes, what are we then doing to actually make sure the changes that we've made stick and stay and are aligned? I've got a template for the people that are on the Zoom call. I will share a link to that template in just a second for you. In terms of techniques that you can use within that A3 or generally, there's a few. I'm not going to go through these in any detail, but 5 whys technique on the top right there, fishbone diagrams to break down a defect and understand where the issues might have been caused. Bottom left there is De Bono's thinking hats. De Bono, bonkers character, but he really championed the sort of parallel thinking, taking everyone through thinking about this, where we're in favor of an idea, where we all disagree with an idea, where we're all external consultants, wearing different hats and thinking about things in the same way at the same time, rather than everybody having a heated argument about things. And the last one, top left there, comes from design thinking, empathy maps, trying to get under people's skin. What is the problem? And when we're thinking about what the problem is, actually, how does it make people feel? And often when we're thinking about things through a process lens, it can be really good to do this, to think about the empathy side of things as well. How do people really feel? I suppose think about how people feel comes on to our problem solving mindset, right? So what is it that we need to, what mindset do we need to be in when we are problem solving? There's a few things here. We need to be curious. We need to focus on our resilience, because if you're solving problems, it tends to be high adrenaline, high pressure, high stress. So make sure you're resilient. Think about how you can make time to calm yourself, and how you've got the things you can do to build your stamina to deal with these situations. Need to be adaptable and flexible. But the crucial thing, I think, for PMO people that are called out there is that very last one. It's being solution focused, finding solutions over finding problems. I think in the PMO space, we can be guilty of going in, auditing, seeing where the problems are, surfacing those problems. But actually what we really need to be doing here is finding solutions to those. So that's it from me. I'll share a couple of templates in a second to summarize. Practice that stop model so it becomes intuitive, so it comes naturally to you when somebody grabs you in a corridor with a problem. Build your toolbox. There's a few ideas that I've given you there, the 5 whys, the A3 technique as well. And crucially, nurture your problem solving mindset. If you know what the mode you need to get yourself into to solve problems is, you can get yourself in that way of thinking whenever somebody hits with a problem, and it gets you on the right foot to solve those things going forwards. That's it on that one. That's a quick one. I'm going to send you a few links in the chat for further reading.
Thank you very much, John. So,
Thanks, John.
I'm hoping you're liking the new format, where we're giving a bit more time getting into some of the areas that rather than dashing and darting about. So, Eileen, over to you.
Okay, now I promised Robert when we had our first conversation that I would not talk a lot, because when I first kind of spoke to him, I ended up speaking for half an hour just about how excited I was about the book. So, quick introduction to Robert. He's an eclectic career with a broad mix of skills. I always like people talk about the mix of maths and music, and that's probably Robert. Engineering, project management, and a whole load of drama thrown into that. So I don't know whether you want to say any more about kind of where your career's taken you, Robert, but I'm really interested. What drove you to write this new book that's kind of come out, that's kind of got it on the bookshelves? Because any book writing is a labor of love.
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So hello, everyone from Chicago. The driver, the first event that happened in my life is that over the past decade, I started concluding that project success rates were not improving. Companies were making the same mistakes, and I felt there's got to be a way to move the needle on this. The second thing that happened was about 12 years ago, I started taking dance lessons. And as some of you might know, being a beginner guy in dance lessons stinks. So you have the incentive to take classes intensely and get out of beginner mode. And what I started concluding from these dance lessons, Latin, salsa, bachata, cha-cha, etc., is that everything I learned on the dance floor applied off the dance floor. When you think of lead, follow, elasticity, rotation, the learning never stops. And I also, at the same time, found myself in improvisation classes. So I live in Chicago. I consider it to be the home of improv. Call out to Viola Spolin, the matriarch of improv. If anyone is not familiar with Viola Spolin, I would encourage you to look her up. And that is the origin of improv. And again, everything I learned in improv applied to my teams. The next thing that drove me to write the book was that I had a couple people close to me pass away in 2017 and 2020, a brother of mine and a good friend. And that, in conjunction with the final driver, was a webinar that I had attended in 2018, led by two 30-something-year-old women who had just finished their first book. And their call to action in this webinar, the webinar itself was entitled, "Do you have a book in you?" Subtitled, "You can't take it with you." So when we think of our legacy and passing, sometimes we think of money and leaving money behind. And I think what these two ladies, these two brand new authors, were challenging their audience to do is get your talent, your wisdom on paper. You can't take it with you. The next generation needs it. So get to work on that book. And so that's now one of my favorite networking questions is, hey, so do you have a book in you? What if you were forced to write a book, what would it be about? So Eileen, those would be the drivers. It's the combination of the performing arts and project success rates not improving, the employee experience not improving, the applicability of the performing arts. And I just knew I had to get this stuff on paper so that others could build upon it. And in the spirit of improv, play yes and with it.
Excellent. And congratulations. As I say, kind of getting the book out is a huge achievement in itself. But there was a bit of me when I read the title, particularly kind of the subtext there, transcending agile with ruthlessness and grace. I suddenly thought, well, is this really going to be a new agile where the world is going to be taken over by innovation, elegance? I love the kind of the juxtaposition of ruthlessness and grace, but is this going to be capital E in future projects now as opposed to capital A?
I love the question. So when I think of capital A, uppercase agile, lowercase agile, I think of the ambiguity that has oozed into the agile conversations. Right, there are certain objective, explicit, unmistakable, unambiguous aspects of agile, and then there are some subtleties. I believe over the last 20 years. Again, the agile world has not been static. So where I land on elegance and what ambiguity might be there, capital E, lowercase e, I feel like it doesn't run the same risk because it's incredibly unambiguous about whether you use the frameworks, and you can point to stuff, you can print it out. Or you can say, we're not doing this. We're not doing this framework that I think we're going to tiptoe into momentarily. And we're not putting this stuff on paper. We're not imitating a symphony. We're not imitating an improv team. We're not imitating a dance couple. So no, we're not elegant. We are VUCA. And my concern right now, the status quo of many innovation teams is that that acronym VUCA, that stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, I believe too many teams are surrendering to VUCA. And the phrase I have heard more than once is, well, it's just what we have. It's, we're in a VUCA world. And I refuse to accept and surrender to this resignation to VUCA, that we just don't need to do that, because the inspirations for amazing people-centric teamwork, we already know what those are. The conversations about the performing arts, these comments are already in our conversations, where someone may say, hey, are we singing from the same hymnal? Are we, well, let's wing it. We can improvise. And so what these books do is you give me an inch and the books take a mile, and let's really exhaust all the amazing, valuable, and fun culture traits of the performing arts.
So I've just Lindsay's just going to kind of put the various kind of elements on there. And one of the things that I kind of really like about the book, and as you know, I've been through it twice, read it through once and thought this is a different world, read through it again and thought, actually, there's some kind of really good kind of different elements that can be kind of picked up on. And as you say, it's not about kind of taking it all and kind of suddenly saying, oh, we're now kind of moving to this. But I think there's some really good elements in there that we can kind of pick up on and use within our organizations, are undoubtedly driven through example and through implementation by the PMO. So I know you've touched on it, just if you could just expand a little bit on this kind of people-centric methodology.
Yeah, so the graphic you're showing right now tries to distinguish, okay, the rational side of my brain says what good looks like is this, what bad looks like is this, and these are the labels that I can give that. And then the emotional side of my brain, the touchy-feely, sentimental side, what does good look like? What does bad look like? What are the labels I can give it? I think there's power in acknowledging this is what bad looks like, and we need to stop committing the same sins in our team. So the reason why I chose ruthlessness and grace in the subtitle is because it's the provocative, intense, extreme version of discipline and empathy. Discipline on steroids, ruthless. Empathy on steroids is giving grace. And so that's where I landed on the more politically correct terms, if you will, are discipline and empathy. And then for a book title, I needed something more provocative. And the words I landed on were ruthlessness and grace.
Excellent. Well, as I say, I love the phrase. So I know we haven't got a huge amount of time, but I just wanted to kind of dip into perhaps one particular element, one framework that you use within the book, which I think which kind of resonates with everybody on the call, because we all use this on I suspect, a daily basis. This concept of racy, that you're suggesting there's a better way.
Just like Agile, the RACI matrix has had a couple decades to improve project success rates, to improve the employee experience, and to solve VUCA. It's insufficient. It's not moving the needle. So when I rethink RACI and the ambiguity that it harbors and the lack of sustainability, the lack of teeth, I feel like we can't manage an infinite number of meetings. We cannot manage an infinite number of emails, right? That would be micromanaging. That's counterproductive. But that third communication channel, structured documentation, that stuff will still be valuable 6 to 12 months from now. So what if we only manage, so to allow project managers to avoid boiling the ocean, what if we only formally manage 5 verbs? It's formally managing only what's worth putting on paper. And the 5 verbs is enforced collaboration. You have names next to each verb. And I just felt that it is it's a way to instantiate a kind of expectation setting factory. I'll pause there, Eileen. Is that a fair?
No, that's fine. I just if we could kind of go on to the next slide, you can kind of just talk about this kind of govern with 5 verbs, which I think is a really interesting way, because often we kind of we have different words for different kind of stages of that documentation, and this makes it kind of quite clear in terms of the stages kind of things go through. And would I be right in thinking there's a kind of there is the opportunity to iterate through these stages as well?
Yeah. So I think the RACI almost got it right. Like there are 4-ish things, 4 different tiers, levels of contributing to work. And again, if you want your work to be durable, it's got to be on paper. So the 5 verbs, shepherds, what I consider to be an agreement factory. A healthy team is a kind of agreement factory. And for those where the word sign off is a little bit scary, well, then I'll hedge and call it an expectation setting factory. And so I feel like instead of a RACI matrix, consider in your project plan 5 verbs, inventory everything that's worth 5 verbs. Don't prohibit other work, but I would argue it's not worth formally managing because it's evidently not worth putting on paper. It's not worth collaborating or having an approval or distributing. So do that stuff at the pub. But anything that's durable, govern with 5 verbs, understand with clarity the dependencies, the duration estimate, the percent complete. If you want a seat at the table, pick a verb. And if that's, you can't stand the heat in the kitchen, step out of the kitchen, well then step back from the 5 verbs. I don't know what else that is, but so it's a ruthlessly disciplined way to shepherd collaboration without boiling the ocean.
Excellent. And I just I love it when there's some really kind of some new thinking that's not just been a kind of an evolving of what's there. This is a whole kind of new take. And I know you've, as you said earlier, you're being deliberately provocative to kind of drive the conversation. And so I would definitely kind of recommend people buy the book, read it. As I said, read it through once. And I think that's kind of as an interest. And as I read it through again with a kind of a different lens and think, well, actually, can I use this? And you're very much open to some feedback and challenge, Robert.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm one person. I did my best with my network, my recent colleagues, my editor, to get folks' attention. Anyone who's in this audience, to get your attention, I was going to have to come out extremely formally and extremely forcefully, so that together we can upgrade, play yes and keep moving the needle. We need to solve VUCA, and I need others' help.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So if like me, you kind of really take a shining to Robert, you can see him actually, he's just about to jump off this webinar onto another webinar, and he's going to kind of do an APMG webinar on how to become a project manager, which might be useful for you to share with some of your team. I'm sure you all love being in PMO, but thank you very much, Robert. Really kind of insightful and a whole new different take on a people-centric delivery framework.
Thanks for having me, Eileen, Lindsay, and John. Yeah, very fun.
Great. Back to you, Lindsay.
Well, as I'm going to say, it's back to John, because if you see his comment, verbs eat VUCA for breakfast. I like
but not too many of them.
Well, we're nearly at the end of the session. In fact, we're coming into a kind of wrap up mode. So you've heard about obviously different news and views that are going on, that hopefully you've found some of that interesting and go and have a look. Certainly it seems to be the changes around Microsoft and what's going on there. You've got to be quick, because apparently loads of other things that are coming out down the line. So if you're Office 365 in at the office, there's going to be a lot of things that are coming for you to be playing with. And we've obviously heard from John in terms of picking out some of the, essentially going forward with House of PMO and PMO HotHouse, is looking at the competency framework and pulling out some of those kind of knowledge, skills and behaviours, things that we can do that are kind of like short pieces. That means you can go and have a look at some of those things in your own time. And then finally, in the hot seat. So remember, if you know anybody, or if you yourself fancy having a sit in the seat, and telling us a little bit more about your PMOs and what you're up to, please do get in touch. It's all about sharing in the community. So in terms of what's coming up for PMO community, in House of PMO, we've got imposter syndrome is going to be a thing this year, I do believe, and we'll have some more information on that, which is related to the PMO conference this year in June. For any of you, or if you know anybody who's working in higher education, we're trying to get that community off the ground and kicking that off in March. We've got key trends coming up as a session. So again, if you've not looked at what the key trends are coming out from House of PMO this year, delve into that session. Again, 10 different things across the hour. And then one by popular demand, not until March though, is about tracking your PMO's performance. And I'd just like to just say that session has come on the back of a member's recommendation that they would like to see something around that subject. So again, if there's any areas that you feel we need to be looking at, that's what we're all here to do, is to make sure that we're providing the right kind of stuff for you. So Eileen, John, any last words from you before we say goodbye and let people get back to PMOing?
No, I'm just going to go and look up the history of improvisation now. That's fascinating.
Yeah, just say great challenges. Yet again, I've come out of a Friday lunchtime with another course I want to do, apparently a book I need to write, and some fresh thinking around the VUCA-ness of the organisations I'm working with. So it's great for me as a presenter here. I'm sure it is for everybody else as well, and I love these sessions.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. And join us next month. We know already that we will be having a look at assurance, and especially if you're joining us from the UK, you can't escape the post office scandal. But we'll be having a look at that from an assurance point of view. It certainly ruffled some feathers in the community, but it's made us think about, I wonder what we could talk about there around assurance. So join us in February. Go and check out the events page, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye everyone.